Bright white lights flickered on, revealing a crouching figure with a black, silk flowing cape, high collar and hood, facing away from us. The chamber ground to a halt, and the figure stood. This is Bloodstone Manor. The figure towered above the room. And right when it stood, a strange aura washed over me, prickling all the hairs on my body, making them stand on end. And though it stood high above in the isolation cell, I could tell the figure was nearly 7 feet tall. And slowly, it turned, and as it did, my heart dropped and I realized the greatest threat wasn't behind me. I was looking at it. The figure turned toward the glass, taking a graceful step. It raised lanky arms and pale fingers splayed out, and I counted 6 on each hand. Its face was long, with high cheekbones and masculine angles. It reached out, lightly laying his hands on the glass. And just as he did, it burst, glass exploding out to every part of the room. Only when it hit me, I expected shards, but it had turned to sand. I'd raised my arm to shield myself from the glass, and as I looked back up, the figure stepped into the open air and floated straight down in front of me. I wanted to scream, I wanted to shout, I wanted to run, anything, but I was locked, solid as a statue, as if I'd lost control of my own body. I opened my mouth, but not even breath escaped. He raised his 6-fingered hand, gesturing toward the creatures behind me, and spoke. "Grim Claws." And I turned, and suddenly, these hellhounds were people. Men and women, all walking upright, wearing odd Victorian-era clothes, as if frozen in time. I turned back to the figure, and he looked me in the eyes, boring straight into my soul. I froze, and he said, "You have done well, Philip." I nodded slowly, unable to speak. "You are my armor bearer, and you will now help me reclaim what is rightfully mine." I started to tremble. Even the sound of his voice threatened to knock me over. And still, when he spoke to me, there was a strange, sickly peace that washed over, a feeling as if I had come home, the euphoria at the edge of death. And then abruptly, he turned from me and said, "Now, leave, tell no one of this place, and wait. You will be told what to do. And under no circumstances will you remove your pendant." Everything in me wanted to comply, wanted to say yes. And I whispered, "No." He spun with unnatural speed and locked eyes, baring sharp teeth, snarling. But instead of speaking, his snarl curled into a sneer. And I heard chains start to rattle high up on the wall. And through his maniacal smile, he said, "Oh, you will." I followed the sound of clinking chains and saw Meg hanging from manacles 20 feet above the ground. Philip. She was coated in blood, and the cuffs dug deeply into her wrists. She hung limply, the cuffs digging into her wrists. A cold fire of rage burned in my heart, and I cocked back my arm to hit him. But I locked in place, unable to move. And he said, "Kneel." And even as I burned with cold rage, I knew there was nothing I could do but comply. I heard heavy footfalls behind me. Two of the Grimclaws, now human, stepped to my sides and grabbed my shoulders. Spinning me around, they led me through the castle. They wound me through the broken doors and torchlit hallways of the castle. It struck me as I left. There were no beds, no furniture, nothing warm about this place. It was all cold and brutal and ancient and antagonistic. Our footfalls echoed on the bare walls. We stepped over the bodies of dead Grimclaws in the hallway. But before reaching the front door, they took me to a side room. And there were two more, a man and a woman. Troy's body lay on a table. And they gestured for me to lay on a table beside him. But when I laid down, they started tending to my wounds. I felt the sting of rubbing alcohol and antiseptic, of stitches pulling at my skin. They were silent. They never made eye contact. And the only noise were my occasional moans. The man flipped me over. Grabbing my arm, he pulled down hard, and I felt my shoulder pop back into place. Now the worst pain was in my left knee. It had swollen to the size of a watermelon, so much that my jeans were actually tight around it. And then I saw the woman walk over to a counter, open a drawer, and pull out the biggest needle I'd ever seen in my entire life. And the man produced a green liquid. And they drew it out with a syringe. I tensed and tried to sit up, but the two Grimclaws who had brought me in slammed me back down, pressing me tightly against the table. The woman pressed down on my left shin and then jammed the needle above my kneecap, forcing the liquid in, and it felt as if a stone had been pushed directly under my skin as the liquid diffused through my muscles. But right in front of my eyes, the swelling dissipated like a deflating balloon, and the white-hot pain was replaced by a feeling of cool, icy invigoration. The men let go of me, and I stood to my feet. My leg felt as good as new, and except for a few burns and scratches, I was all right. We walked back to the front door and out into the courtyard where it had all began. Only Troy was laying dead on a table now, and Meg was chained high above the ground. It was just me, these beasts, and the box. The men brought me to the front of the box and stood at either side, one producing a key. He handed it to me. I unlocked the metal box, and inside saw a smartphone and another envelope. I furrowed my brow and pulled out the envelope first. It was heavy. I opened it up and pulled out a metal card about the size of a credit card. It was charcoal black with an iridescent red circle on front. I reached back into the box and pulled out the phone. And when I raised it up to eye level, facial recognition unlocked. It was a single app with a red circle, just like the card. I tapped on the app, and when it opened, it was a bank account showing a single number above the word balance. $10 million.